Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Chord Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today we are continuing One Piece, Rangers of the Sea, based on the Heroes of the Morphing Grid series, Part 2. But first and foremost, as always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Chord Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. So as we go into today's part, one suggestion that I got in my comment section for the last video that we made was you guys want to hear the story of how the other Straw Hats get their powers. Now, I was wondering whether or not I wanted to do that since every video would essentially be about how the Straw Hats get their powers going into Marineford, but I decided that I'm going to compromise and do a little bit of both. That's why with this series, the story will basically work in two parts. The first part of the story will show each Straw Hat getting their respective power and learning how to use them as they all make their way to Marineford. Then in the second half, or in the closing parts, I'll give you a brief update on how Luffy is doing as he makes his way through Impel Down and eventually gets to Marineford himself. The reason for this is that with Impel Down, while a few things will change, for the most part, nothing in the story will change all too drastically until we get to the actual Battle of Marineford in and of itself. And since the Battle of Marineford is going to be a big all-time special that's going to be very long, that's why a lot of the big changes are going to be saved for that part in particular. But anyway, I do hope that this kind of story format works. It's something I'm going to be trying with this video. And afterwards, you can let me know if you would like for the story to be told this way, or if there's any more that you would like to see added to it as we continue. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Zoro would awaken in a paw-shaped crater. His sword's by his side, his body still heavily taped, as he was still recovering from the battles that he had endured prior to the attack by the Marines at the Sabaody archipelago. The last thing he remembered was Kuma giving him the information about the fate of Luffy's brother, Fire Fist Ace, as well as them needing some new power. For Zoro, he wasn't one to rely on the strength of others. He believed in himself more than anything. But all the same, he knew how dire the situation was. A battle at Marineford between some of the strongest pirates and marines in the world. A battle that should not be taken lightly, for if it was, it would result in his absolute death. A battle so fierce that some of the most world-renowned would be there, including Mihawk of the Warlords. Zoro remembered all too well his last encounter with the swordsman, how he was utterly decimated. He had the scar on his chest to prove it. All the same, Zoro knew what he was supposed to find, but with his lack of direction, he had no telling of where it would be or how he would get to it. Finding some type of device with the skull and crossbones, and some key. For Zoro, his sense of direction was, well, non-existent. He wasn't too concerned about it, but he knew that now wasn't the time to waste. He found himself running all around the island he found himself on, unsure of just where he was going to eventually find this lost and forsaken object. With every stride he took, he could feel himself growing a bit weaker. He would stop and hunt down some wild animals. He was a terrible cook to say the least, but he needed something to eat to maintain his strength. Eventually, after searching for a while, he would follow a stream. He wasn't sure of why, but he felt being close to the waters would help. And before he knew it, he would find himself being led to a clearing with a cave not too far away. As he looked around, he could hear the sounds of a waterfall off in the distance. Looking over, he could see it stretching far up into the sky itself. He felt as though he were on the right track somehow, although, for him, there was no way of knowing. For all he knew, he could have been going in the wrong direction, but in the end, Zoro just simply had this feeling. A feeling that this was where he was supposed to be. As he continued his path down with the water, he would eventually make his way to the cave. However, before he could progress any further, there would be a figure sitting. It would be within the opening, a young man sitting on a pile of stones. He looked as though he would rather be anywhere else but here. The young man dressed in a blue jacket, and by his side were swords. The young man would yawn as he looked up to Zoro, Zoro looking a bit perplexed, as he didn't think that there would be anyone else here on this island. The young man had his dark hair tied in a ponytail, as he stood and stretched before looking out to him. Zoro would ask for the young man's name, but he would pay him no mind. For Zoro, now wasn't the time to deal with rudeness, and he certainly didn't have time to waste on someone who wasn't going to help him. Zoro was preparing to walk through, deciding that he would just go past him and enter into the cave. However, before he could even think to move, the young man kicked him in the gut, sending him flying back out into the open space. "That was pretty rude of you, disturbing me in my rest. Just who the hell are you? You think you can just go around kicking me? Huh. It doesn't really matter what my name is. What really matters is what do you think you're doing here? It's none of your concern. I don't think you understand how it works here, pirate boy. You walk into this cave, it is my concern. And if you refuse to answer, then you'll pay the price." A tough guy, huh? Zoro would pull his swords from his side. He figured only one would do. The young man would take his blade as well, his saber. He had about 5 of them. Zoro never meeting someone who fought with 5 swords. He wondered if this could be a bit of a challenge. A 5-sword style to his 3-sword style. However, the young man would only use 1 sword, keeping the others at bay. He wouldn't need to use any more against him. For Zoro, he took this as a form of an insult. Not wanting to be pestered any further, Zoro would make his charge towards the swordsman. The 2 blades colliding with one another, sending reverberating shockwaves all around. The water starting to become more into an uproar. As the sound of their blades echoed throughout the forest, Zoro found it to be a little difficult to keep up with him. It was as if the boy was a natural swordsman, one that could rival or even surpass him. However, despite feeling as though he were on the back foot, for some strange reason, Zoro felt extremely happy to meet someone that could challenge him, someone that could push him. As they continued to fight though, the young swordsman became less and less impressed. Before long, Zoro would find himself on the ground once more. You're just a bandit who's come for my treasure, are you not? Your treasure? Don't play dumb with me. You're here for my morpher, aren't you? I see. So it belongs to you then. That's right. And give me one good reason why I should give it to you. Look, I was told to come here and get it. Is that so? And do tell, what exactly do you plan to do with it, besides waste the time of your captain? The captain? That's right. You call yourself a swordsman. Your captain's right hand, the one of whom he's supposed to rely on. And yet where are you now? When your captain needed you most, you faltered. I didn't. Don't tell me that you didn't when you did. Because otherwise you wouldn't be here. You see, there's no tomorrow for people like us. All we have is today. The right hand of a captain is meant to serve as his acting force. Nothing is supposed to happen to the captain unless the second in command gives his absolute all. And from where I'm standing, you are not giving it your all. I see 2 more perfectly good swords by your side, yet you refuse to unsheathe them. If I'm not to be mistaken, you're on a bit of a crunch time, aren't you? That means you can't afford to waste. And yet here you are, coming at me with just 1 sword. You must not want my treasure bad enough. And that's fine. I don't care. It's not my captain that I need to save or protect. If you really think you're giving it your all right now, then that's all well and good. But when they deliver your captain's head on a pike, you have no one else to blame but yourself. Hearing these words affected Zoro deeply, more so than anything else he had heard in his entire life. Here Zoro was, fighting aimlessly against whoever this person was. Now there was no time to waste, no time to be subtle. Zoro unsheathed his 2 other swords, placing 1 in his mouth and 2 in his hands. As he got into a stance, Zoro prepared not to hesitate. Even if it killed him one way or another, he was going to make it to Marineford. Now seeing focus and determination, the swordsman will hold up his blade once again, as Zoro went in for another charge. This time more focused, not looking to play games or waste time. As Zoro charged towards the swordsman, he simply smiled as they clashed once again. This time, their battle rocking the island itself. For Zoro, he had no idea how much time it waned. Before long, the sun was beginning to set. And before Zoro had known it, his opponent had actually picked up more of his swords. 5 to 3 to be precise. Zoro could feel that he was on his last legs. But now wasn't the time to slow down, no. Now was the time to pick things up. Zoro continued pressing onward, wanting to give it his all, until he couldn't feel his arms or legs any further, until he could hear his blood pumping through his very veins, as he could feel the very tremors of his heart, taking in desperate need of oxygen. Zoro's vision became a bit more hazy. He felt as though he were losing his senses in every regard, but yet still he continued to fight. It was as if his body didn't know anything else. He couldn't afford to stop now. He couldn't afford to quit. For Zoro, he had to be there for Luffy, to be there for the others. Right now, he could bet that everyone was facing their own difficulties, their own trials. He knew that now more than ever he had to be the one that would make it to his allies. As the battle continued, it would eventually come to an end when their swords clashed for a final time. Zoro felt as though he were about to crash into the ground. Even though his spirit was willing, his spirit was at an all-time high, greater than anything he could have possibly have imagined. But yet his body just simply could not keep going any further. However, before he could hit the ground though, he would be picked up by this young swordsman. He would help carry him to the cave and sit him down. Before long he would start a fire before cooking him a quick meal, allowing Zoro to eat and to rest. The next morning, Zoro would awaken once again. He felt as though he were refreshed somehow. He wasn't entirely sure of what had happened. He looked to see that the young man of whom he had fought was still sitting. It was like he never went to sleep at all. "Well, you definitely put me through my paces. I have to say I'm impressed. I must admit, I have a lot to learn before I'm on your level. Oh, don't worry, you'll get there." The young man would reach behind his back before pulling out a device. He threw it to Zoro, and Zoro caught it. It was what Kuma had told him to look for. Along with it was a blue key. Zoro couldn't believe that this was it. It's what he had come to find in the first place, but even still, the idea that he had it this whole time? Had this simply been a test to see whether or not he were worthy of the power? Don't get the wrong idea. I knew that you were worthy, but rather I just wanted to see your resolve for myself. You see, I had a captain once, a crew, and we fought till the very end. But ultimately, the life of a pirate, it eventually catches up with you. That there is my legacy, but it is also my burden. A curse. I wasn't able to draw out its full power, but I believe you will be a different. To hold that means that you will be the finest swordsman that this world has ever seen. But I want you to go beyond. Be one that surpasses even myself. As Zoro stood, he would bow to the man. He would simply nod his head as he stood and stretched, explaining that he had been here for so long, he forgot what the sea smelt like. Zoro now having what he needed, the young man would accompany him as the two of them walked towards the edge of the island. Zoro followed him as he had no idea where he was going. As they eventually made their way over to the shores and to the sea, the young man would simply point in the direction. "Straight that way. I assume if you travel well enough, you'll be able to make it just in time. That there is where you'll find Marineford." "I see. But just how on earth am I supposed to get there? I don't even have a boat." "Oh, don't worry. You won't need a boat. You might need to rest from island to island for a bit, but you'll be well enough. That device I gave you? That's called a sailor morpher. You simply place the key inside of it and give it a twist, and then you watch the magic happen." Zoro did as instructed. As he took the blue key, he placed it into its inner lock and turned it. Instantly, a rush of energy would wash over him. An energy as bright and as the blue as the seas themselves, as hopeful as the blue sky above. Zoro felt himself being changed. He could feel the power coursing through him. He could feel as though a burden, a gift, a curse, but something even more extraordinary than that washed over him. And before long, he had now transformed into the Blue Pirate Ranger. With his 3 swords now by his side, Zoro felt exhilarated. This power. I feel like I've become a part of something even bigger than myself. I can feel it all coursing right through me. Although I must say this helmet might get in the way of my fighting. Oh, don't worry about it. Just focus on the mouth opening. Zoro would do as instructed, and the mouth part of the helmet would open wide, allowing him enough room to place his sword in his mouth while still keeping the helmet on. It was a nice feature. It still allowed him to fight as he normally did, and it could open and close by mental command. Placing his sword now back into his sheath and his helmet now engaged, Zoro would turn to the young man and ask just how this power was supposed to help him. The young man would tell Zoro to simply focus on what he needed right now more than anything. Zoro would focus. He needed something that could get him through the waters, something that would allow him to travel quickly. What he needed was the power of the sea. As he focused, his golden belt would open, revealing to him another key. Zoro took it, seeing that it was modeled after some other type of being. Someone who was blue, but had a golden sash across his chest, and his helmet gave off the markings of a shark. Zoro would use the key, similarly to how he used his other one with his sailor morpher, and Zoro would find himself transforming as he turned into a new ranger. Instantly, the name of this ranger would become known to him. Surging Shark, Blue, Wild Force. What is this? It's a great power, my friend. That will allow you to travel through the seas with no problem at all. Remember to stay focused at where I pointed to, and you'll get there in time. Wait, how do you know all? Just trust me. I do. What's your name? My name's Joe. I'm Joe Gibkin. As Zoro turned to thank him, the young man was nowhere to be found. There was no sign of him anywhere. No sign of his footprints in the sand. It was almost as if he never existed to begin with. The more Zoro thought about it, he wasn't entirely sure if he was ever here in the first place. Maybe he had seen a spirit, or something else along those lines. But right now, the only thing that mattered was getting to his friends. He had his directions, and he knew where he needed to go. With his swords by his side, Zoro would get back into a stance as he rushed into the seas themselves. With the power of the surging shark, Zoro would race forward. The Blue Ranger was now on his way to Marineford. In the meantime, with help from Boa Hancock, Luffy had successfully made his way to Impel Down, However, little did the Straw Hat know that his arrival, while not expected, was all but an anticipation. For you see, the Marines were making moves themselves. The Vice Admirals, and even the other top lieutenants from all over, the warlords and everyone in between, were gathering, for they knew fully well that a storm was coming. A storm known as Whitebeard. In just less than 17 days' time, the Battle of Marineford would be underway. A battle that would shape the pirate world, and for the Rangers, a battle that would shape worlds beyond even their own. This concludes One Piece, Rangers of the Sea, based on the Heroes of the Morphing Grid series, Part 2. As always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow, as I am hoping to try to get out the Part 5 of Jujutsu Kaisen Curse of Daishi, based on the Heroes of the Morphing Grid series also, as I wasn't able to do so on Monday. And hopefully, once we get out on Saturday, we can do the final part of Season 1 of that series, that being Part 6, that will be on the following Monday. Also, if I have the time, I would like to do Part 2 of What If Tanjiro Had Venom, Demon Slayer Dark Fury Season 2, Part 2, by tomorrow afternoon as well. So be on the lookout for these upcoming videos within the next 24 hours. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.